Hello everyone and welcome to another Stargate video. Spaceships. Everyone loves spaceships, and why not? They're really cool. Most settings have factions that already have spaceships, and usually with a lot of different types. However, this really isn't the case for Stargate. For one thing, most factions in this universe only have a few ship types. A fighter, some mid-sized ships, a larger cruiser-like ship, and maybe some kind of capital ship. And out of all the factions in Stargate, I think Earth was kinda screwed on the number of ships they got. Not just in terms of variety, but strictly numbers wise. While at the end of Universe, Earth was arguably the most technologically powerful faction left, numbers wise, they're still dwarfed by the Lucian Alliance and the Wraith. Now, this does make sense in Universe, and to be frank, from a budget perspective, but it is still sad that we never got to see more ship types Earth could have made. However, some of the extended media did create new ship types. In this video, I want to explore these ships and their possible future in Earth's fleet. I know not everyone is a fan of the extended medias, so don't take this as hard canon, but more future possibilities. And just to add an interesting hook, I have a big surprise at the end. First though, let's go over the history of Earth's spaceships in Stargate. This goes without saying, but this isn't going to cover things like the Apollo program or the space shuttles, for hopefully obvious reasons.
These shuttles, they are a formidable craft.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Stargate Command was created with the mandate of finding advanced technologies to defend the planet. While they had success in finding new technology, knowledge, and allies to defend the planet in the first few years of the program, a lot of these were somewhat lacking. The biggest threat was if the Goa'uld ever decided to attack in force. Sure, SG-1 had managed to destroy 2 ships in an attack, but let's be honest here, a good chunk of their survival was luck, and we saw at least 2 versions of Earth in other dimensions that were not so lucky. Even with Earth's inclusion into the Protected Planets Treaty, they still had to worry about a possible Goa'uld attack if they chose to arrive in force. It was only about 3 years into the program that the US military began to develop counters to an attack from space, starting off with the X-301. This was to be a fighter interceptor, a hybrid between human and Goa'uld technology with 2 recovered death gliders used in its construction. While initial trials seemed promising, during its first test flight, something went wrong. Turns out inside the Goa'uld hardware was a recall device. It would take control of the fighter and return it to the system lord's homeworld, but would go at a speed that would result in the pilots dying from malnutrition. This almost resulted in the death of Teal'c and Jack had they not been rescued by Jacob Carter. The ship was left in the void and the X-301 project was abandoned. The next attempt was the X-302. While a number of components of this ship were reverse engineered from Goa'uld technology, the rest was entirely human built. While the initial prototype was destroyed involving a situation with Anubis and the Stargate, it proved to be effective enough that the design entered mainline production, being renamed the F-302 Fighter Interceptor and becoming the mainline fighter used by the Tauri. While this was a good development in the building of the Tauri fleet and the defense of Earth, these fighters would never be able to go toe-to-toe with larger craft. This is where the X-303 came into play, later known as the BC-303, or as many know her, the Prometheus. Earth's first large-scale vessel capable of interstellar travel and designed to take on Goa'uld motherships. The ship was human-built but included various alien technologies, getting a few more later when it was given some Asgard shields and weapons. The ship had something of a rocky history, as it was stolen twice, once before the ship was properly launched, and another time by a single person. On its shakedown cruise, the ship ended up stranded on another planet for some time, leaving Earth defenseless. That being said, the ship did take part in some important events, such as the operation to repair the time dilation device to contain the replicators, or the Battle of Antarctica. All in all, it served as a fine ship in Earth's fleet, that was until it was destroyed by an Ori satellite. In case you're new to Stargate, you might have noticed I've only been talking about the Prometheus for the 303. Well, that's because there was ever only one ship of this model. Well, it seemed that the next ship, the Daedalus, would have been of a similar model. In fact, there seemed to have been plans to make a whole fleet of 303s, but with advancements in tech, the 303 had been made obsolete. This led to the creation of the BC-304, or the Daedalus class. In my opinion, the best ship design not only in Stargate, but science fiction as a whole. And I think even in universe this was recognized, as every ship that followed the Daedalus had this design, those ships being the Odyssey, Clorvel, Apollo, Sun Tzu, and the Phoenix. The latter immediately renamed the George Hammond in honor of Lieutenant General George S. Hammond, who in universe died during its construction, and the actor who played him, who also died in real life around this time. Sadly, we never got any more ships for the 304s or in general, but like I said, the extended media have made a few ships of their own, starting off with the Atlantis Legacy books, which actually introduced 2 new ship classes. Which, heads up, there's no visuals for these, so I'm going to get creative with the imagery here. The first we hear about these ships is in the book Homecoming. We really don't get much on the first ship besides its name, the Austerlitz class. It's still on the drawing board and its construction was halted for a reason I'll get to in a second. The second ship class isn't given a name, but we do learn it's an investment from the Indian government and that it's specifically a scientific vessel. But that project was pushed down the road a good 3 to 5 years at best. The reason for this, as well as the Austerlitz construction being halted, was due to a global economic crisis. Remember, Stargate's history does somewhat line up with our own, and the recession had officially ended the same year Atlantis did. This book also adds that shipbuilding is an expensive investment, at least in universe.
The X-303. Research and development of the hyperdrive alone has cost them over $2 billion. And it still doesn't function properly.
Yeah, that's about the funniest damn thing I ever heard.
This and the economic crisis is making the wealthiest nations feel the pinch. But what made this worse is that the battlecruisers haven't proven to be a good investment. Out of all the battlecruisers the Atari have made, which in total is 7, only 4 were around by the time Atlantis ended. Side note, the Sun Tzu's fate was left uncertain in the show after the Superhive incident. The books go with the idea it was unsalvageable, but the Atlantis comics show it is still in action. Regardless, it's made clear in this book that when it comes to ship construction, money is kind of a big issue. Which is odd because in the next book that talks about these ships, the Furies, seems to have done a 180 on this idea. While America has suspended work on a new vessel indefinitely, the Russians are 3 years away from replacing the Korolev. And it's here we learn that the Austerlitz is 18 months away from completion and that this ship belongs to the EU. Which, side note, how pissed do you think France and the UK must be in the Stargate universe over that? They are 2 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, but they're the last to get a ship, despite being 2 of the US's closest allies. And just to pour salt on a wound, not only do they have to share it between themselves, but the rest of Europe. With the hull being built in France and the communication systems being assembled in Poland, which feels weirdly on point for little European Texas today. I couldn't find any more information about the Indian vessel in the books other than a point between Jack and the President, about how it's just another way to explain how massive the Stargate program has gotten, and it's only a matter of time before the secret gets out. The next ship comes from the comics, so we actually have visuals for it this time, and is one I've covered before, the EOS class from the Stargate Vala comics. Now my initial video was somewhat critical of this ship. I've kind of eased up on it, if only a little bit. The main issue I have is with this giant tower. It just feels like a weird evolution from the Daedalus class. It kind of feels almost like a step backward going back to the Prometheus tower thing, or even an adaptation based on the pyramid part seen on the Destiny, only far larger on the EOS. I do remember some people defended the tower, saying it could have been more for storage or a research thing. And to be fair, it's kind of the only thing we see the EOS used for, transporting an evil sentient plant to another planet. It's hard to talk about the EOS because we really don't know anything else about this ship. Even the timeline of when this ship would have been around is kind of confusing. The first half of the Vala comics series is set before she joined SG-1, but the setting is kind of odd. We see a lot of examples of advanced humans, lots of aliens, and even some interstellar states and entities. But this doesn't really feel like a setting that makes sense if the Goa'uld Empire was still the dominant state in the galaxy, since they don't really allow for any of that. We do see the Lucian Alliance, at least some form of it, so my best guess is that this past event took place sometime after the fall of the Empire and Vala joining SG-1. But it's kind of a short window for all this to suddenly pop up. The second part of the comic, where we see the EOS, is set years, or several years is the closest number we get, after the past section. And we see Vala is part of Stargate Command now. Something I noticed about the EOS bridge is that it looks more advanced compared to the past bridges we have seen, so I wonder if it's possible this ship came into existence in a post-universe era, but that's just guesswork on my part. The next ship is kind of an odd one. I can't even say for sure if this is a Tari ship, but I want to talk about it anyways. It's this thing from Stargate Worlds. I first noticed it in the Valiant's video about lost games of SG-1, which you should all go watch. I got the editor for the game up and running, and after poking around the game files, I found the model. It's called a LUS cargo shuttle. Now again, I can't be 100% certain that this shuttle would have been an Earth ship, but it does appear to be in an Earth base, and I think it does share something of a resemblance to the Earth battlecruisers. That being said, I can see people asking why they have a cargo shuttle if the Tari have teleportation tech or the puddle jumpers. To that I say keep in mind this shuttle would have been on Lucia, the homeworld of the Lucian Alliance. So maybe given this base was on a hostile planet, they couldn't use or risk using the teleportation tech. And for the puddle jumpers, keep in mind those are just ancient ships the Tari are using. Most of them are in Atlantis, which I think the timeline would still have them in Pegasus, and there are a finite number of them. If Lucia was a hostile world, I doubt they would want to risk them. And furthermore, I think at some point Earth would try to make some kind of ship to fill that role. Side note, am I the one who thinks if they rework this design, they would make a really cool dropship like the Falcon from Halo or the Republic gunship from Star Wars? I can't be the only one who sees the vision, right? And now we get to the final ship from the extended works that I want to talk about that really inspired the creation of this video, the Hammond. No, not that Hammond, this Hammond. This Hammond comes from the video game Stargate Unleashed. We saw it at the tail end of episode 2 of the game, which we got to see more of in episode 3. Oh, wait a minute!
Son of a bitch!
So, with barely anything to go on, what is this thing? Because despite looking very similar to a 304, it's not. The biggest indicator of this is this bridge section. On the 304, it's relatively small and off to the side. On this ship, it's in the center and appears bigger. Those might seem small differences, but they are there, so what's going on? Well, again, we're sadly working with little information here, but here's my best guess. The game's main enemy, Sekhmet, used a machine called the Attend device, which is capable of allowing the user to travel through time. And it becomes very evident she used this device in the later half of episode 2 of the game, as we see she has the corpses of various system lords in her throne room, including Ra, which shouldn't be possible in the main timeline since, well... She's created a timeline where she has risen to dominance over the other system lords and is finishing her conquest with an attack on Earth, who I guess she just left alone to gain the technology to defend the planet. However, I think this can actually be used as a way to explain why this ship looks the way it does. If Sekhmet began to rise in power, Earth, in desperation, would have accelerated any work on the BC-304s, or even possibly the BC-303s to defend the planet. And we know Earth in this timeline has more than just one ship, as we see in this trailer. I like to think this design is meant to be more militant, kind of like that one episode in The Next Generation, where we see a more militant Enterprise and Starfleet as a result of years of war with the Klingons. A similar situation could be going on here, but putting aside the time travel thing, can I just state how much I love this design? To me, this feels like a natural evolution from the Daedalus class, or even a better combination for elements from the 303s and 304s than whatever the EOS was trying to do. Overall, I really want to draw attention to this ship, which you, the viewer at home, can look at now, because I'm leaving an FBX file of it in the description of this video. For free. Yep, that's my big announcement. If you want to examine this model or make 3D prints of it, you go right ahead. Go nuts. In summary, what do I think of these various ships and their possible roles in the future? I do like the story potential of the ships talked about in the books. An issue in universe that began to develop near the end of SG-1 was the US monopoly on access to advanced tech.
Well, can you blame them? I mean, 3 years ago, we promised to share all off-world technologies.
Of a non-military nature.
That wasn't in the original wording of the agreement.
Hey, look, I don't want to argue about this. I'm right. We'll leave it at that.
So other nations beginning to build their own ships feels like a natural development and would be interesting to see. The EOS is... I don't know, to be honest. I am just not a fan of its design all that much, and we know so little about it, I can't really think of much to say. The cargo shuttle I think would fill a necessary role in any future Tari operations, unless they can replicate the puddle jumpers. And the Hammond is my favorite ship out of all of these. It feels like if we got new Stargate tomorrow, this would be a natural evolution for the ships in Earth's fleet to go down. But what do you all think? Do you like any of these ships and would like to see them in Stargate proper one day? Or do you prefer some fan creations, and if so, what are some of your favorites? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, leave a like and subscribe, follow me on my social medias, and remember...
How many ships do we have available?
Aside from ourselves, there's the Apollo and the Sun Tzu.
How about the Odyssey?
It's on some secret mission even I'm not supposed to know about.
Then two will have to be enough.